Amid the DJ's tropical house beats and the smell of scorched orange peel mingling with meat smoke, I stood inside the citrus and smoke truck with my heart pounding as if I'd just run a lap around Lake Eola. The line stretched all the way to the churros counter, the oil sputtering like a rainstorm. I had thought tonight would be only sweet and salty and laughter. Then Inspector Denise stepped up, composed, neatly coated. Beside her was Detective Morales. "Maya, I need Mr. Bob to listen to this," she said, and the crowd instinctively left a pocket of silence. A small beep. Then the audio from the hidden mic last night at the commissary lot came on, the deep voice I knew too well. "Just loosen the gas valve, pull the GFCI, and the girl will fail immediately. She'll give up." No one laughed anymore. I looked through the fogged glass and saw Mr. Bob, my father-in-law, standing frozen as if he had just accidentally snapped the gear shift. I felt something crack inside my chest, not because of permits or inspection scores, but because the keeper of my husband's family honor chose to make me fall on the very truck where I had fallen asleep so many nights to pursue this. Denise lifted her gaze, her eyes neither sharp nor soft, only clear. "We have the tape. Tonight's goals are public safety and fairness," she said. I nodded, my hand still on the steel cooktop, the coolness pulling me out of the daze. I am Maya. If anyone asks what the hook of this story is, this is exactly it. When the truth comes out of a small speaker in the middle of a night market, and the whole snack district goes quiet to listen, he protected family honor by sabotaging the very truck of his own family. But tonight, the health inspector brought a wire, and I will not give up. The speaker turned on. It all started with the refrigerator. Early morning in the commissary kitchen, the hood hummed steadily like a long breath. Knives clicked on the wooden board, the salsa pot bubbled and breathed out the scent of tomatoes, green peppercorns, and purple onion. I stirred the tub of pork marinated in guava achiote, fine orange zest clinging to the backs of my hands, annatto's red gleam like a promise on the bright steel surface. Ethan stood to the side, opened the temp logs, and read out the 41 Terdegacha, 135 Degrantaris marks like a spell against forgetting. Keep cold under 41, keep hot above 135. I nodded in rhythm, dated the labels, snapped the lids on, wiped the board's edge, then glanced at the checklist taped to the truck door with clear tape. Gas checked, generator has oil, disinfecting wipes, enough ice, commissary paperwork clipped and ready. Outside, Orlando was turning over. Edgewater swept gold across the lake. A diving bird pulled a long ripple. I knew by afternoon there would surely be a sudden downpour and then a quick retreat, leaving the air as easy to breathe as if just rinsed clean. For me, the food truck is both dream and calculation. The dream is lifting the pan lid to hear the first sizzle, a customer stopping by the third time to ask, "Still have brisket?" The wave from Disney workers getting off shift all coming at once, glitter still caught in their eyes. The calculation is the serve safe hung right by the door, touching each gas valve in turn to see it's firm, tilting an ear to hear whether the generator's rumble is even, tucking commissary invoices into a plastic sleeve to enter them at night, rechecking the outlets before service. I don't believe in, if it works, it works. If it breaks, so be it. I believe in small things done on time. Because one small mistake doesn't just make customers complain. It can burn down the sleepless dream I've been chasing. By noon, Orlando was as hot as an oven cracked open. I brushed a guava glaze over the cooked meat, sliced Publix Cuban bread, listening to the faint crisp under the knife. Ethan said temps are good, giving me a look that was enough for the two of us to understand. We worked like a dance whose steps we already knew. I was on the stove, Ethan took orders, boxed, labeled. Sometimes I looked up and saw a family in Mickey Mouse hats beaming, saw a young couple share the last bite of a sandwich and nod as if they'd found exactly the taste they wanted. Sometimes clouds dropped, rain dumped for a few minutes, the road steamed like hot tea, then the sky cleared again. The line added another 2 or 3 meters, and I heard my own breathing steady in the scent of orange wood smoke. In the evening, we swung by Winter Park for family dinner. On the table were a pot of stewed beans, a simple salad, glasses of white wine, and the conversation followed the familiar path. Work, the yard, the weather. Bob tilted his chair slightly, poured more wine, and sneered. A food truck is just a hobby. Ethan should come back to his father's restaurant and do it properly. I set the spoon down lightly, hearing the metal touch the plate like a period. I could have listed weekly revenue, talked about the license, the festival contracts, the new collaboration emails, but I just smiled, lifted my glass of water, and said, "We're fine. Tomorrow I'm up at 4 to marinate a new batch." Ethan touched the tip of his finger to my back. A small touch, but enough to remind me I'm not alone. At night, we parked at the commissary lot, locked the doors, and jotted a few quick lines in the book. How many pans sold out? How much bread remained? What level the gas was at? I sat in the cab for another minute, looked through the windshield and saw the city lights ripple like water. In Orlando, dreams don't blaze like fireworks every night. The dream here is the steady engine sound, the toilet paper roll replaced on the right holder, the guava scent lingering on my hands until my head hits the pillow. I closed my eyes and pictured the next morning. Edgewater taking on a new color again, afternoon rain possibly crashing down out of nowhere, Disney off-shifters smiling and pointing at the menu, and me, I would stir the marinade tub again, hear Ethan read 41, 135, and believe that small things will lift this aluminum truck over every speed bump. The generator that had just had its oil changed suddenly roared and then lost steam like a runner tripping over a rock. The lights in the truck flickered. The GFCI tripped with a dry click. I turned off the stove, opened the back door for air, smelled gasoline mixed with the guava glaze still warm from the last batch, and felt my throat go scratchy. Ethan checked the cords, wiped off the condensation, said probably the humidity, and then we both restarted. The engine ran smooth, the line filed back in, and I comforted myself. Orlando's sun and rain swing wildly. Minor malfunctions are normal. Day 2, when I opened the prep fridge, the cold didn't bite into the skin of my hands like it always did. The thermometer was just over 41 degrees, a boundary we know by heart, even though the fridge had been serviced last week. I made a round of power cycling, swapped ice pans, moved ingredients into the backup cooler, then suddenly saw the thermometer dial had been rotated off its mark, tiny, but enough to make the numbers lie. I stood still for a beat, listening to the hood's steady drone above as if reminding me to stay calm. I didn't accuse anyone. I just wrote in the log. 80912, thermometer misaligned, adjusted, temps back to safe, and added a strip of clear tape to hold the face in place. Day 3, I received an anonymous email sent to the DOH. Citrus and smoke has signs of cross-contamination. The line was bare, no photo, no timestamp. The next morning, the inspector came right on schedule. I'm not afraid of inspections. The paperwork's ready. Temps are fine. But inside there was a thin cold streak, like when you open a cabinet and know someone has touched your things. Denise reviewed each item, took notes in pencil, her voice as pleasant as always. But when I signed at the bottom of the report, the pen tip trembled a little from fatigue, and I suddenly realized I had been holding my breath since opening the truck. That afternoon, Gloria at the commissary texted, The backlot camera last night caught someone standing right up against your truck. Rain was dumping. Saw the silhouette of a long shirt, baseball cap. I opened the video. Raindrops beating the frame white. A figure leaning near the side door exactly where the auxiliary outlet is. The face wasn't visible. I scrubbed back and forth, as if looking closer would make the rain tell me someone's name. My heart beat slow but deep, the slowness of a person who has begun to add up small pieces that don't match. In the evening, Ethan set his phone on the table, the screen lit. A message from Bob. Dad has a universal key for this model of truck outlet. Whenever you need a rescue, tell Dad. The word rescue made me smile slightly, but not with joy. We don't need rescuing. We need doors always locked on time. We need dry outlets. We need the numbers on the thermometer to tell the truth. I asked Ethan, "Did you tell your dad the other day about the GFCI?" Ethan shook his head. He's gentle, not good at reading subtext. I didn't blame him. I just poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of him and one in front of me, like placing on the table 2 unspoken sighs. That night, I sat in the truck, listening to the city soften after the rain. I skimmed the log. Engine oil changed the day before yesterday. GFCI trip yesterday. Prep cooler short on chill this morning. The anonymous email and the inspector coming right on schedule. The commissary camera catching a silhouette. And the message about a universal key. Everything lay still in a row, coincidental, like a row of empty seats exactly where you want to sit. I pulled tape tight over the knife cabinet lid, rechecked the gas door seal, replaced the GFCI outlet altogether, and photographed each step. Not because I'm suspicious, because this dream needs me to be careful on behalf of those who don't want it to run. The next day, when I lifted the pan lid, the sizzle returned like an old greeting. I told Ethan, "Let's lock it straight into the schedule, once every hour." He nodded. Disney offshifter still smiled, still asked for extra sauce, still said so delicious about the guava acayote sandwich. I smiled back, worked the pan, my heart counting beats. Today, everything will be right. But in the log, I had written one sentence, to remind myself not to loosen. Coincidence happens only once. Twice is a pattern. 3 times is a human hand. I started piecing things together from the place that seemed the most harmless, the commissary lot camera. Gloria called me over to the desk, dragged the mouse to fast forward to the 1:18 a.m. timestamp. The Orlando night rain fell thick like lace, but the lens still held details I didn't want to see. A man of a familiar build, long shirt, baseball cap, bending right in front of the gas cabinet on the truck's side. He opened the lid, hunched for another beat as if feeling his way, then stood squarely in the blind spot. Gloria paused the frame, zoomed in a little. In the streak of pooled water reflecting on the floor, I caught the glint of a license plate on an SUV with a Walker Catering decal, clearer than the person's face. My heart didn't race. It sank, as if someone placed a round stone in the middle of my chest. That morning, I brought my phone, gloves, and a clean cloth out to the truck. At the edge of the regulator, fresh scratches slashed across the metal surface, sharp and bright like last night's claw marks. The hose clamp had been rotated out of the position I had marked with a paint pen. I took close-ups from every angle, clipped a plastic ruler next to the scratches for scale, then stuck on a small temporary warning tape. Not to scare anyone, but to tell myself, "You saw. You recorded." Back at the desk, I flipped open the maintenance log. 10 p.m. last night. Ethan had ticked off the checklist, written "OK" in neat block letters. Right below was the signature of the commissary's night shift manager. The small line of writing stood upright like a witness that doesn't know how to lie. from 10 o'clock to 1:18. Between those two markers was an entire intention. I reopened the anonymous email sent to the DOH and forwarded it to a dev at the vendor who had helped me with formatting before. He didn't ask much, just said, "Send raw header," then returned a short line. Comcast IP from Bob's neighborhood. I looked at the cold string of numbers like looking at a license plate in a puddle at dawn. It says nothing about the heart, but tells very clearly the position of the hand. At noon, the family group chat lit up with a line Bob sent by mistake. "Wait a few weeks, they'll fail and figure it out." The message was withdrawn afterward, but it had already nestled neatly into a screenshot Cheryl sent privately to Ethan with the line, "Dad slipped." I didn't reply. I poured 2 glasses of water, set one in front of Ethan and one in front of me, listening to the ice crackle as it melted like a clamp newly adjusted back into the right notch. In the afternoon, I brought everything to the DOH to meet Inspector Denise. The room was bright white, posters about food safety on the walls, the sharp scent of a freshly uncapped marker. I laid out the scene photos, the 10 p.m. OK log, the 1:18 a.m. commissary cam clip, and the printout of the email metadata results. Denise turned each page, asked only enough to connect the thread of the story. Datey. Morales stood behind, arms loosely folded. I spoke slowly, avoided any heavy words, stuck only to the order of time. When I paused to breathe, Denise closed the file folder, looked up with a gaze both solid and kind. "You could go the litigation route immediately, but it will take long and push everyone into a defensive posture." She placed a pen on the regulator photo, the scratch lying under the pen body like a fine scuff. "Instead, we'll do a proper sting. I'll schedule a reinspection and bait Bob to step forward to advise." I looked at Denise, still not sure I had heard correctly. She smiled very slightly. "Florida is a land of sun and permits. We will do it by the book, and on tape." The plan was simple, like a piece of music with few notes. The reinspection would be set for a busy evening. Before that hour, Denise would stop by the truck to check safety as usual and ask open-ended questions about the gas, pretending to be concerned to see who would show up with a key and rescue advice. If that person stepped in, the mic would go live, and I would simply cook as I always do. Right temperatures, right procedures, right breathing rhythm. Morales would stand at the edge of the crowd watching the shoulders, the gait, the words. I nodded, feeling my hand less shaky as I signed the work report. Anger doesn't steady me like timestamps do, and blaming doesn't make the bread warm like evidence does. That night, when I returned to the commissary to lock up the truck, I walked past the patch of water where the camera had once reflected the Walker Catering license plate. The rain had dried. The ground gave back its ordinary concrete color. I understood. The truth is not always right on the surface. It hides in a scratch, a rotated clamp, a 10 p.m. OK log, an IP in a quiet suburb, and a mistakenly sent message. My job is to line them up in the right order, then let the right people press the record button. The Orlando night exhaled coolly. I shut the truck door, heard the small, sure click of the lock, and told myself, tomorrow, when the music comes on, when the line stretches, I will stand behind the cooktop as always, and let the truth arrive on its own, on time, in the right place, on the right tape. For the Lake Eola Festival, the commissary lot was so quiet it seemed to have swallowed all engine noise. I opened the side door of citrus and smoke, and a thread-like whiff of gas rushed out. Light enough for a hurried person to overlook, clear enough for a kitchen regular to stop. I turned off all the switches, turned on the fan, checked the lines. The generator cranked, clack, clack. A few beats, and then died completely. The lights in the truck flickered once and went dark. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the prep cooler. The cold surface breathed out indifferently. The thermometer climbed to 48 degrees like a feverish shiver. Inside, the tray of guava acciaudi marinated pork, the half-done roast chicken batch, the container of shrimp for tomorrow's special, all lay neatly as if awaiting orders. I looked at the clock, recalled the last time the temps were still safe, then quietly rolled the industrial trash bin up to the door. Ethan rushed over, his shirt still smelling of the afternoon rain. "Let me try the GFCI again," he said, bending to the outlet as he wiped his hands on his pants. I nodded, but my eyes didn't leave the face of the cooler gauge. Every minute that passed was another portion of the dream drifting out of the safe zone. The generator stayed stubborn as stone. I pulled out my phone, opened the log. 2010 temps met. 21:05 second check OK. From then until now was a blank. I did not permit myself to estimate. I took a marker and wrote one line on the edge of the clipboard. 23:14. Cooler. Fash it egsha kiss. When Ethan said, "Maybe we should close for now," Bob appeared like a sudden camera pivot. He wore a long shirt, a baseball cap pulled low, a jangling bunch of big keys in his hand. "Let Dad handle it," he slapped the truck's side like patting a horse. "Tomorrow's the biggest festival of the season, don't you dare skip it. I'll have product brought over from the restaurant. Same source for the meat. Who could ever check?" I took a long breath, feeling the outline inside me stretch taut like a lead wire. "No switching sources," I said slowly. "Paper trail ruined." He laughed. "All papers and forms. You sell food, not paper." Ethan stood between us, his eyes darting back and forth, one hand to his forehead as if to keep everything from falling. I opened each pan, took photos, labeled discard, and dumped all protein 41 grasshouses into the bin. The sound of meat falling was heavy like small coins hitting the bottom of metal. I counted in my head: several pans of brisket, a guava marinated pork batch, shrimp, chicken. Losing a few $1,000s and a day of revenue I had dreamed of all week. The sweet guava scent lifted one last time. I did not allow myself to regret. I chose. I wrote in the log, "Discard per temp abuse." I taped the trash bin lid, tied it tight as if tying a decision so it wouldn't wobble. Ethan stood stunned at the empty pans. "Maya, what do we sell tomorrow?" I spoke softly, so my voice wouldn't crack. "Sell drinks, sell sides, or clothes, but don't sell half true and half false." Bob slapped his hand on the folding table. "My stuff is cleaner than the things in this truck. If you want, just stick the restaurant invoice on it. The inspector doesn't have a magic eye." I turned to face him, my hand still on the rim of the bin. "Paperwork isn't to fend off the inspector, it's to protect the customers and our license. If something happens tomorrow, you won't be the one standing there." I pointed to the ServeSafe placard hanging askew on the door. "My name is on it." Bob sneered, looking at his son. "See? Her hobby is dragging the whole family down." Ethan exhaled and stepped to my side. "Dad, we've said it. I'm here." That sentence wasn't loud, but it was enough for a draft of air to cool my chest. Both sides were silent, only the streetlights tick as it changed phase and the breathing night scent of Orlando out in the lot. I texted one line to Inspector Denise. "Cooler 4880 fee, safe. Discarded. If needed tomorrow, I'll close for inspection." The message hadn't turned blue yet, but I already felt myself steadier. I shut the gas valve, pulled the key, sealed it. Ethan gathered the remaining safe sides into another cooler. I labeled the transfer time. Bob stood for a moment, then finally shook his head and turned away. "Up to you." The key ring jingled again, the sound fading like the rain letting up. I sat down on the truck step, my back against the cool door. Ethan handed me a bottle of water. We both drank, saying nothing. In the sky, the city lights rippled like small waves. I thought about all the times I've stood at the stove, about the hands that trusted me when they opened the lids, about the Disney kids slathering sauce on potatoes and laughing out loud. I cannot let a single rescue wreck what I've built with timing and care. The losses can be repaid over time. Trust cannot. When we finished tidying up, I latched the door. Heard the click of the lock like a period at the end of a sentence. I texted Ethan, "Up early tomorrow to check the generator. If it can't be fixed, then cancel. I'll call the festival and tell the truth." He nodded. We left the lot, the night as quiet as a clean sheet of paper. In my head, my voice sounded on its own. No mic needed, no audience, only myself needing to hear it clearly. In that moment, I chose to fail clean rather than pass dirty. The sting plan began with a speakerphone call right on the DOH desk. Inspector Denise dialed the number. OPD sat opposite, opening the incident log. "I see your kid's truck has a few issues," she said calmly. "Do you know your way around it?" On the other end, Bob laughed as if he'd just heard a small matter. "Head to the back lot of the commissary, I'll show you a few tricks." I stood by the window, watched a patch of Orlando sky change color after the rain, heard my heart beat steadily like the range hood. Not out of hatred, but because I knew that this time, instead of arguing in the kitchen, we would let the paperwork and the tape speak for us. Before the appointed time, Date Morales clipped a body cam onto Denise, checked the mic once more, and told me to stand outside the frame. "An unmarked car," he pointed toward the corner. "Park 1 block away." At the commissary, Gloria pulled the camera angle back and switched to a higher resolution. On the screen, the back lot appeared with each white paint stripe clear enough to see a hand misturning a screw. I opened my notebook and hastily wrote a few words. Let the truth do the work. That night, wind from the lake blew across the lot, the smells of damp metal and asphalt mingling. Bob arrived early, long shirt, baseball cap pulled low, an unhurried gait like someone stepping out back to fetch a hammer. Denise held a clipboard, asking as if asking a father showing a child how to fix a bicycle. "I think the gas valve is stuck. Can you take a look?" Bob clicked his tongue. "Kids. I've been managing rented trucks for years, you can tell at a glance." The sentence fell onto the cement like a screw bit. Then everything unfolded to the rhythm he knew by heart. Fingertips loosened the joint right at the regulator, used the edge of a key to pry the GFCI tab slightly, his mouth explaining as if teaching an ordinary kitchen trick. "Want the code to fail? Simple as that." I stood at the edge, hand gripping the strap of the glove bag, hearing the small click of the GFCI like a finger snap striking a dream. But this time, every click went straight into the mic. Morales stood in the shadows, eyes never leaving the hands, working. I saw the red light on the camera on Denise's chest blink once, then steady. Everything was on tape, cleanly. No one made an arrest right away. Morales nodded slightly, signaled enough, but held position. He whispered, only for me to hear, "Save the public reveal for the right moment." That way, no one can spin the story as family conflict or misunderstanding. I understood. To grab him now would only let rumor win by sheer noise, while the light gets dragged into a corner. Denise thanked him for showing us, added a few lines to the technical guidance report, then closed the clipboard like closing the lid of a box. Bob dusted off his hands, tossed a final line. "Tell them not to be stupid. This industry needs people who know the rules of the game." I watched him disappear behind the row of willows, his shoulders giving a slight shiver in the night wind. In my head, the markers I had set kept interlocking. 1:18 a.m. the figure in the rain, scratched regulator, shifted clamp, 10 p.m., OK log, Comcast IP, missent message, and now the self-brag neatly captured on the mic. They were no longer a string of suspicions. They were a road. On the way back, I put my hand out the window to let the river wind dry the metallic smell that lingered. I thought of the bright aluminum truck under the noon sun, of the meals already sold, of the thanks from unfamiliar tourists. I saw that my dream didn't need shouting to be protected. It needed order, patience, and a well-timed press of play. Denise texted, "Tomorrow I'll re-inspection at the night market. The rest, let the public hear." I replied with a simple emoji, then put the phone away. People say, don't wash dirty laundry in public. I say, bring it to the middle of Lake Eola, not to humiliate anyone, but to keep safe the people who pay to eat my food and to keep my own spine straight. As the car turned into the lot, the city lights laid thin golden streaks across the pavement. I closed the door, heard the neat click of the lock, and knew that tomorrow, when the speaker turns on, the tape will speak. Not with anger, but with clarity. I woke earlier than the alarm, opened the truck, and began by replacing the things that had kept me up at night. The regulator, the gas line, even the GFCI. The technician from the propane station checked for leaks with soapy water. Bubbles rose and then vanished cleanly. I photographed each step, noted the time in the corner of the photo, and slipped the invoice and the warranty record into a clear plastic sleeve. Ethan stood beside me, handing over tools while reading the checklist again, his voice steady like a heartbeat. Shut the valve, remove, install, test, take photos, file the records. When the switch clicked and the generator hummed smoothly to life, I felt more air in my lungs. But fixing it was only half the story. The other half was patching trust. I laid out a long work table, set up the food safety binder like erecting a spine for the truck. The first tab was shift temp logs, with colored boxes to mark receive cell close. The second tab was the supplier's COA, lot analysis sheets with the date printed clearly. Next came the cross-contamination SOP written in plain language, color-separated knives and boards, the order of wash, rinse, sanitize, glove change frequency. Then the allergy chart, milk, peanuts, gluten, printed large, laminated, posted right by the door. I added a thin, quick check sheet hung in front of the cook line. Ice bath to calibrate thermometers, lid labeled with time, sanitizing towel used in one direction only. Each sheet was like a rung. Climb enough rungs, you stand higher than yesterday. In the afternoon, I retrained with Ethan, not to blame, but to remember together. We set 2 timers, practiced hot holding, 135 watt, cold holding, 41 terstafel, and the 4-hour rule using mock containers. Label the time the lid is opened, at the mark then discard, no negotiation. Ethan read aloud, I repeated, just like in the mornings when he reminds me about 41 to 135. We calibrated all the thermometers in an ice bath, replaced worn probes, color-marked them by point of use. I wrote on the whiteboard, best sellers, check every 30 minutes. Below were 3 small squares. Tick 1 when done. No high science needed. Just do it right and fully. When costs rose, the community came. Lupe from the taqueria truck brought over a tub of pork shoulder and a roll of foil. Pay it back slowly. A dev from the refrigeration vendor swung by after work, handed over a bag of spare parts and a quick print time label design file, and even improved my magnetic board for the temp log so we could clip magnets and keep it from getting wet. Truck folks around Orlando who heard about it shared a backup generator, ran an extra safety cable, pointed out a parking angle that rode the wind so exhaust wouldn't blow into the door. Gloria lent us another bay in the commissary storage and kept a key for us, smiling. Let me watch the cameras tonight. I looked at each face. No one asked, "Why the fuss?" They only asked, "Need anything else?" Kindness has a way of entering a kitchen like that. Not noisy, but warm. In the evening, I sat at the laptop and wrote a social teaser. Citrus and smoke back this Saturday. Clean, mean, and inspected. I stitched a few photos. The brand new gleaming regulator, the new GFCI outlet, the binder open to the SOP page, a shot of Ethan smiling behind the steam rising from the pan. I didn't try to tell a sob story. I told what we had fixed, replaced, done again, and added a small line, "Thanks to the Orlando Trucks community for the backup generator and extra support shift." After posting, I turned off the screen, letting the kitchen hear its own sounds again, the hood running smoothly, the fridge breathing deep, the small salsa pot bubbling like a promise. Late at night, I turned to Ethan. "Tomorrow let's run a mock before service. Full procedure." He nodded, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the binder. I understood. We weren't just fixing the truck. We were mending trust. Of the customers, of ourselves, of the people who reached out at the right moment. And as I wrote the final VO line in my head, I felt myself smooth like the lake after rain. On festival day, if anyone asks what we did, I will smile. We rebuilt from the roots, so your meal reaches you clean, correct, and with enough care. Down over the lake like a thin layer of honey, the wind carrying the smell of wet grass and roasted corn along the row of trucks. The line in front of Citrus and Smoke stretched long, everyone waiting for guava pork fresh from the grill. I stood behind the cooktop, hand tossing the pan, eyes flicking to the temp board. Hot, holding on the mark, cold, holding resting below the line. The food safety binder was open to the SOP page right by the door, like a new spine I had set up for myself. When I set the lid on a box and looked up, I saw Bob standing at the edge of the line, hands in pockets, a faint smile like a chalk streak. On the grass, the festival lights came on one by one. At the rim of the crowd, Inspector Denise approached with Date. "Merhales." Denise gave me a very small nod, the kind that said, "Keep working. We'll handle the rest." Denise called the organizers over, speaking loud enough for the row of trucks to hear. "Reinspection, passed. Now to the matter of sabotage." A rustle of whispers rolled across the crowd like a ripple. Denise set a small speaker on the counter. I heard the familiar beep. The audio came on, needing no extra amplification. Bob's voice low, a touch smug. "Want the code to fail, simple as that." The next sounds were metal striking metal, the GFCI tab being bent, then the line, "Loosen the regulator one notch." I didn't speak. I let the tape speak. Morales raised a tablet, zoomed in the parking lot cam. A rainy night frame, the figure of a man hunched at the gas cabinet, then a stop on the water's reflection showing a familiar SUV license plate. Bob's image appeared, leaving no room for misunderstanding. A few nearby vendors shook their heads. Someone exhaled like setting down a heavy tray. Ethan turned, his voice gone dry. "Why did you do that to us, Dad?" The question drifted slowly across the space between two men with the same last name, then shattered right in front of us. Bob lifted his chin, shouting loud enough for the whole row to hear. "I'm saving you from the food truck life. This life is only hardship and humiliation, you hear? Come back to Dad's restaurant." The word "saving" hit me like a wrench dropped onto the floor. I set the spoon down, wiped my hands on a towel, looked straight ahead. No one saves anyone by breaking their steering wheel. That's all. Nothing more. Morales stepped forward, his voice even. "Mr. Bob Walker, please step over here." He read the rights. Each word falling onto the grass like driven nails. Destruction of property, interference with business, Temporary no contact with me and Ethan per on-site recommendation, pending formal order. The cuffs clicked onto his wrists with a sound smaller than the GFCI that day, but final. The crowd went quiet for a few seconds. Then there was scattered applause, as if they weren't glad someone fell, but glad someone stood upright. Lupe squeezed through, hands still dusted with masa, and tapped my shoulder. "Serve them hot, Misha." I nodded, feeling a warm current run from my wrist into my chest. Denise turned to me, speaking just loud enough. "You did the right thing. The rest goes by procedure." I answered with a nod, then turned back to the stove as if returning to my own breathing rhythm. I poured a layer of guava glaze over the meat, the sweet, smoky smell rising like a freshly opened letter. Ethan took the tongs, boxed, labeled, his eyes still red but his hands steady. I looked at the kids in mouse ears beaming, watched an elderly couple share a sandwich, and understood. Tonight we weren't selling a sad story, we were selling the right meal. At the front of the line, a middle-aged man spoke softly. "Thank you for throwing away that batch." I smiled, handed over the box. "Thank you for staying in line." The DJ shifted to a lighter track, as if knowing to step back for the conversation of truth. The organizers announced over the loudspeaker, "Citrus and Smoke has passed re-inspection. Please continue." I looked at the food safety binder open, the colored tabs running down like mile markers. The anger in me slowly dissolved, leaving a gentle, bright space. Turns out what we needed wasn't a shouting match with winners and losers, but light shining in the right place, timestamps lined up, and the tape playing at the right moment. I wrapped 2 sandwiches for Lupe. She whistled a smile and headed back to her truck. As the police led Bob past the lake, his shadow stretched long over the grass. I didn't watch for long. I bent down, rechecked temps, flipped quickly to the allergen chart, then washed my hands once more. Ethan leaned close, whispering, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. No one has to apologize for standing in the right place. I handed him a cup of lemonade. He smiled, a smile smoothed flat after many wrinkled days. Above, the festival lights were like small stars, not ardent, just bright enough to see the way. A group of young people came up, pointed at the menu board. 2 guava pork for us, 1 brisket." "Yes," I said, hands moving fast while my heart stayed calm. In my head, my own VO voice flowed out, not to be played on a speaker, but for me to hear. "People say, don't wash dirty laundry in public. I say, bring it to the middle of Lake Eola, so everyone eats safely, and so my dream no longer has to cling to the shadows." I closed the last box, set it on the counter, hearing the rustle of paper like wind skimming the surface of the lake. The Orlando night stood still for a beat, then bustled again. We, me, Ethan, the truck, stood in our proper place. Clean, clear, and still cooking. The Orange County Courthouse was as cold as an air conditioner set a bit too high. I went through the scanner, placed the key ring and a pen into the plastic tray, heard a small beep, and then the green light came on. The stone-tiled hallway gleamed. People coming and going spoke softly. Ethan sat next to me, gave my hand a squeeze just firm enough to steady the words left unsaid. Samantha Greer rearranged the file stack. The food dump receipts, invoices for replacing the regulator, gas line, GFCI, the generator repair estimate, the email confirming the cancellation of the Lake Eola shift, the reconciliation sheet for the day's lost revenue. When the clerk raised her voice, I heard the case name ring out clean: State v. Robert Walker. The courtroom door opened. We stood. In the room, everything proceeded quickly and clearly. The state attorney read a summary. criminal mischief with damages over $1,000, unlawful interference with equipment, based on audio and camera recordings. Bob stood before the lectern, shoulders hunched, his attorney whispering something. When the judge asked, he pleaded guilty to criminal mischief. The sound from the court reporter's recorder clicked on like a period. I did not feel vindicated, only as if someone had wiped a patch of fogged glass. The prosecution pared down the tampering count under a plea agreement in exchange for full restitution and compliance with the protective order. The judge glanced through my file, stopping at the receipts I had lined up. Food dump per safety rules, repairs and replacement of parts, lost revenue based on the festival contract and the previous week's statements. The pen touched paper, his voice even. Restitution granted. Then came the part I both awaited and felt the coldest. The restraining order. The paper came out still warm. The judge read slowly. Mr. Robert Walker shall not come near the commissary, the festival grounds, or the citrus and smoke truck within a 500-foot radius. He shall not contact Ms. Maya and Mr. Ethan directly or indirectly, all communications through counsel. I gave a nod, as if nodding to myself. Outside the courtroom, Patricia, my mother-in-law, stood at the corner of the hallway, clutching her bag so tightly the fabric creased. She came over, her voice low. Maya, I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't know it would go this far. I looked at her tired eyes, the woman who had many times wrapped pastries for us on days when orders piled up. I spoke softly, counting beats to stay calm. Thank you for saying that, Mom. I need time. From today on, anything related to the truck and work, please go through Ethan or the attorney, and please don't come to the commissary lot. She nodded, her hands dropping, as if she had just set down something heavy. I didn't hug her. I kept a distance just enough for the boundary to stand upright. That same afternoon, a white DOH envelope lay on the kitchen counter like a cool stone. I opened it, the paper smelling of fresh ink. Citrus and smoke is in substantial compliance. The next line, anonymous complaint, closed. I breathed in deeply, clipped the letter into the food safety binder between the SOP page and the supplier's KOA, like tucking in a small, non-superstitious charm. It doesn't ward off misfortune, it only reminds you to do things right. Denise texted, case closed. See you at the next inspection, like any other truck. I let out a small laugh. That is the finest compliment for a truck, to be treated like any other. In the evening, I went back to the commissary alone. I opened the side door, switched on the lights, heard the generator breathe steadily. I gave the stainless edge another wipe, straightened the allergen chart, then poured lemonade into the dispenser. Ethan sent a photo. The new menu board, the small line at the bottom, inspected and ready. I replied with a photo of the binder page open, the colored tabs aligned, then sat down on the truck step, my back against the doorframe. The city outside was not noisy. The yellow lights spread over the lot like diluted honey. I thought about the day we dumped the guava meat batch, about when Bob was handcuffed before the crowd, about the quiet looks of neighboring vendors. It has all passed, but what remains is not a sweetness. Justice is not sugar sprinkled on the surface. It is the clean taste of straight-line ledgers, tidy invoices, and recordings that speak in place of every argument. When I locked the door, the small click echoed clearly inside the empty truck. I texted Ethan, "Up early tomorrow to marinate a new guava batch." He replied, "Yes, and I'll bring extra ice." I smiled, turned off the lights, letting the darkness wrap the steel frame like a thin blanket. The road back to the kitchen doesn't need fireworks. It only needs papers in the right place, people at the right boundaries, and a truck lit on time. I closed the door. Said it out loud to remember longer. Justice is not a sweetness. It is the clean taste of ledgers, invoices, and recordings. Night in Thornton Park. The string of hanging lights breathed softly like stars pulled close to people's faces. The line of customers murmured like water. Ethan stood at the order window, his hands swiftly taking orders, sometimes tilting his head to smile at a child hugging a can of soda. I was in the kitchen, pan-searing guava pork until the surface of the meat shone as if coated with sunlight. The scent of guava and orange wood smoke blending and sounding like an old song. On the chalkboard in front of the truck were 3 neat white lines. We passed. We serve. We keep receipts. I wiped the tray edge, looked up just as Ethan lightly nudged my hand, speaking softly enough for only me to hear. I choose you, and this truck. I smiled, set a slice of bread on the just seared meat, and answered, we choose to stand upright. Sometimes life seems to need a shout to win, but it turns out it only needs a dinner done right. The right temperatures, the right procedures, true to our heart. I am Maya. Our best revenge is not back and forth words. It is staying open, clean, and busy. Thank you for going with me from the moment the gas smell made my heart sink to the moment the first box tonight snapped shut with a crisp sound. If this story helps you stand a little steadier, please like, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. I want to greet you by your city's name next time. Question for you tonight. Have you ever received an anonymous complaint? How did you handle it to protect your kitchen without losing your composure? Tell me, so that among these radiant culinary streets, we can keep the meal right, and the heart calm.